So you're thinking about investing in real estate in Germany, but you're not exactly sure how to start. Maybe you have heard it's complicated or you feel overwhelmed by all the rules and taxes. Well, you're in the right place here. In this video, I will guide you step by step through everything you need to know about buying your very first investment property in Germany, clearly, simply, and without confusion. By the end, you will know exactly how to start investing smartly and confidently, even if you're a total beginner. Let's dive in. First of all, you need to ask yourself the question, what do I want? Okay, this is the most important step to get started. So first of all, we need a strategy. Or well, even first of all, we need to understand what is your goal. Or you need to understand yourself what is your goal. Okay? If you want to generate passive income, for example, it would make more sense if you buy apartments to rent out. If you say it should be more emotional because you would like to have your own home, because you love a garden and you would like to enjoy life with that garden, then it's also understandable. So if you know your goal, then you can also decide, do you buy a home ownership? So do you buy something to move in yourself? Do you rent out properties? Or do you actually do both? Obviously depends on your budget. So this is, first of all, really important to understand. This is the most common mistake people do when it comes to their financial planning. They don't have a clear goal in mind and don't plan accordingly. Okay? So second would be, what would be the strategy? So do you prefer, for example, passive income? Do you prefer appreciation and you would like to sell tax-free at some point to cash out and move to another country? Is it more about retirement? Is it about tax benefits? Do you consider real estate to reduce your taxable income? For example, to be entitled for parental allowance, which also makes sense. When that's clear, you know, okay, what do I want? What is the goal? Is it more, well, this is just my wish, home ownership. I would just like to have a house with my family because my life would be better at that point. You would feel better, which is also totally understandable. Then it's pretty easy to say, okay, this is step one or this is step one. Okay? Third would be budget. If you know you would like to have a house in a certain location, let's say you would like to have a house around Berlin, certain square meters, it should be beautiful in a good location, well, then we are probably talking about 700,000-800,000 euros. If it's just an apartment, then it might be a bit less expensive, but this number is really important to know. So if you know, okay, in my situation, my goal is X, then you can search for properties which meet your criteria. Then you search for these properties, you notice they cost 500, 600, 700,000 euros, obviously depends. You should always calculate with an equity capital, if we are considering home ownership, of something around 10%. Why do you need to pay 10%? Well, we have buying tax, it's land transfer tax, then we have notary fee, and then we have a property agent. And it's difficult to avoid a property agent if you're searching for a house to move in yourself. Okay? Buying tax depends on the federal state in Germany, 3.5 to 5.5%. So for example, in Bavaria, we only have 3.5%. In North Rhine-Westphalia, we have 5.5%. Okay? Buying tax. It's even 6.5%. Then we have 2% for the notary, and on average, we have 3.57% for the property agent. So now it obviously depends where you buy real estate. If you do it in Bavaria, we have 3.5 plus 3.5, so we have 7, plus notary would be 2. In another location, you might need 11, 12%, for example. Okay? So if you know that this is the target, you need a certain amount, then you can save for that target. Or if you already have 10%, so let's call it 70,000 euros, you already have that in the bank plus some emergency fund, then you can at least consider, we have to understand if it makes sense, but we can at least consider, or you can consider, to buy that apartment because you have 70,000 euros in savings, property value is 700,000 euros, and then you can buy the property from financial perspective. If you also have unlimited working contract, you're not in a probation period, and you obviously have a certain income. Regarding income, it's difficult to say because many factors like credit score also are important. But income, you can calculate monthly income times 100. This is more or less the credit line for a house, okay? So if you have a household income of 7 or 8K net, then you would be at least in the position to finance 700 to 800,000 euros. If it makes sense with that income, it's on a different page, but in general, a bank would give you that money probably if everything is in order, okay? If you don't have the money, well, then you can particularly save to that target. You know you have a certain savings rate, so we know at another point you'll have that money in savings, and then probably 3 to 6 months earlier, you can already search for properties because it takes some time until you actually have to pay that equity capital to the buying tax notary agent, because this is only paid after you bought the property. And it obviously takes some time. It's not like you search for the property and 2 weeks later you buy it, okay? So we have budget. If budget is clear, then we can search for properties. This would be for home ownership. So this would be home ownership. Let's briefly talk about renting out. Renting out works differently. So let's say now you can buy a smaller apartment because you don't have like 50 criteria which are important to move in yourself. If you want to rent it out, it's an unemotional investment, typical. So you just look at the numbers and that's it. Okay. Obviously, location should be in order, but it's easier to buy something to rent out because it's significantly easier to find an apartment that you could rent out in comparison to moving in yourself. So now you maybe start with a smaller apartment because you don't need 80, 90, 100, 120 square meters or even more. You say, well, maybe I start with 50 or 70 square meters. Obviously, also depends on the location, which prices are applicable. So now you buy something 50 to 70 square meters. If you buy properties to rent out, it's quite easy to avoid a property agent. So you should search for properties without a property agent. So we only have buying tax, plus we have notary. So we have 3.5 plus 2, 5.5 in best case. In worst case, we have 6.5 plus 2, so we have 8.5. And now you see it's easier to get started and also to build a real estate portfolio. Let's take the center here of 7%. So we have 200,000 times 7% would be 14,000 euros. So if you have 40,000 euros saved plus some emergency savings, you could actually buy a property. It also means that if you can save 1,166 euros per month, so 14,000 euros a year, you could actually buy one property every year to accelerate your wealth building, save taxes, generate passive income. Depends on your goal. Okay. And now you see, well, what do you want? Do you prefer owning 4 apartments that you rent out and at some point you have 4,000 euros passive income? If the mortgages are paid off and we calculate with 1,000 euros rent each, or would you like to focus on the house and this is more important, or are you in a position and you can afford both? Okay. So this is budget-wise. If you know, okay, now I want to invest, I have a certain budget, maybe a house would be too early in my situation, it's not quite clear where I would like to stay long-term. I'd start with an apartment to rent out, then you know, okay, these are the numbers, and then you can get started, okay? So when that's clear, you search for properties accordingly. Here you can use Immobilien Scout, Immobilien Welt, or if you're not comfortable doing it by yourself, you could reach out to us and we would search for properties according to everything we've discussed already, or to someone else if you prefer that. Then they search for properties and then they present you properties to satisfy your needs there. Then you search for the properties. At some point, you probably view some properties. Here it's really important to understand building fabric, to understand how everything works. You have to ask the right questions. So it's, I would say, not that easy, but if you spend months and many, many hours, then it might be the case that you do it correctly. I would doubt that, but you could do that if you prefer that, okay? So you have viewing, you can ask the property agent questions. You need to ask all the important questions when it comes to building fabric, maybe history of the apartment, if the apartment's already rented out, history tenant, everything what's important. And viewing. At some point you make the decision and you say, okay, cool, I would like to buy this property. Now you need to get a mortgage, so financing. Here I would definitely recommend that you talk to an independent broker, which is working with every bank and has connections to every bank's personal connections. This is important because your current bank, it might be the case that they offer the best rate because they already know you. So in general, it could make sense to also ask them. But in general, it makes more sense if you just have an independent agent who's comparing all the banks and just selecting the best offer for you. This would be financing. If financing is clear, you tell the notary, okay, you're interested to buy the property. So you would receive a purchase contract from the notary. Here is really important that you check everything from legal perspective. Okay, so there are no disadvantages, rights for the current owner or the current tenant or the government or whatever. This is really important. Here is also analysis of building fabric, since it's so important. I mention it again here. Then we have purchase contract. We can also help you with that. This is not a problem because my wife is a judge in Germany, so we have some good knowledge on the legal terms to explain that properly to you. And if that's also fine, and you say, okay, numbers are clear, financing is clear, everything is discussed, well, then you set up a notary appointment. Please don't make the mistake that you set up a notary appointment before financing is sorted. This is also a common mistake that people think, yeah, my advisor told me it will be clear and all good and I will receive mortgage. No, you don't go to the notary without having final confirmation from the bank. And you have final confirmation if they send you the mortgage agreement. Then you have the final confirmation. Not if they send you an offer, not if they tell you it's cool, we do it. Only if you have the contract, you actually do go to the notary. I know many property agents, this is quite common because they only earn money if you buy the property. They tell you, yeah, let's schedule a notary appointment, we can solve it. And if we can't solve it, it's not a big problem, we do it later. No. You only go to the notary when financing is done and in order. Then you go to a notary. If you rent out the property, at that point, property management should get started. And when your first real estate investment is done, then it's more about scaling. And then we come back to this point here. Okay, what is our goal? What is the strategy now? What is the budget for the next real estate investment? What makes sense? What would you like to achieve all your financial goals? And also help you with that. And then it's clear. Okay, and then you can scale and then you have a plan that you save a certain amount to build up equity capital again, and then you buy another apartment. So this is it. This is the process. So please don't start at point 4. That you just say, yeah, I guess I would like to have a house because my rent is quite high. So now I start searching and now I find something. Oh, this looks good. Yeah, let's view the apartment. Let's see if we get a mortgage. Yeah, let's buy that apartment. This doesn't make sense and typically leads to losing money or making severe financial mistakes. Okay? And there you have it. The essentials of real estate investing in Germany. Starting might seem intimidating, but remember, every successful investor began exactly where you are right now. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like, subscribe for more straightforward tips on property investing, and leave a comment below. What's the number one thing holding you back from investing in real estate? Thanks for watching, and here is to taking your first step toward financial freedom.